it's always tempting to save a couple dollars, right? And anybody that's seen any of my videos will tell you I like to experiment with cheap parts. For instance, my intercooler, my M3 style grills, my start-stop button, those are all cheap parts. Actually, my front bumper, also cheap parts that worked out pretty well for me, so I didn't really have any issues. And I've had a pretty good track record with buying cheap parts and experimenting with them. And it's not because I'm cheap or I'm tired of paying the BMW tax, which is very real, by the way. For instance, you know, my Z4, which I have two parts for here today, I bought that car for $4,000, but when it was brand new with all the options it has, it was a $50,000 car back in '05. So I need to remember, if I'm buying parts for that car, I'm not buying parts for a $4,000 car, I'm buying parts for a $50,000 car. And therefore, they're going to come with a price tag just because that is how capitalism works. Anyway, there are a couple parts that I've had trouble with when trying to replace with a cheap part. And I did it because I would like to save a couple dollars if it worked, but I was also curious. I have two of them here, which you may recognize immediately if you've worked on a BMW before, especially a BMW with the M54 inline-6 engine, and that is the mass airflow sensor and the intake manifold air flapper valve, the DISA valve, DISA valve, however it's pronounced, it doesn't matter. That's the valve. They're expensive. So if you want to get a factory OEM replacement for this, it's like $200 to $300. And then this is also going to set you back about $4 to $5 if you're getting a genuine OEM part. Depending on where you shop, you might be able to get a little bit cheaper. But still, those are the average prices that I found. And I bought these because I needed both of them. Check engine light came on, I scanned it, and it said secondary intake air valve or something like that. Which, you know, I researched it as this bad boy, and then of course mass airflow sensor issue, which is going to be this one right here. And I found these online, and they were super cheap. And it was at a price point where it's cheap enough that it's probably not going to work very well. Like it's going to be you get what you pay for, but it's also cheap enough that how do you not give it a shot? So again, this you're going to pay about, say, average $250 for an OEM piece. This was $12. So like $12, yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot for $12. Order from Amazon. They're not that cheap anymore, but you can still pick them up for like 25 to 30 bucks. Don't, by the way, but you could if you wanted to. This, however, was a little bit more expensive. So like I said, a brand new factory fresh OEM piece is gonna run you about, let's just call it 400 bucks with shipping and all that. This, however, I picked up for $80. So 80 bucks isn't exactly a small amount of money, but when you're talking 80 versus 400, yeah, it's worth taking a gamble on. And at first, I installed both of these pieces, and at least with this one, everything was fine. The car fired up, the check engine light was off, it ran okay, and there was really no issue. So I was like, hey, I fixed it for $12, no big deal. And then we move on to this one. Now, this one is a little bit of a different story. So I pulled it out of the box, and immediately the first thing I did was test the flapper valve, which it's nice, it's tight, it operates smoothly, and I don't know if you can hear the suction from the little vacuum hole. So it seemed like it was going to work, and it's actually a pretty well built piece. In fact, if I said, hey, I need an OEM, we'll call it DISA valve, and someone said, boom, here you go, I would happily accept this and go, oh, I thank you for this DISA valve. I will go install it right now. And I'd be happy. However, there are some issues. Number one is the gasket that surrounds the valve that actually goes into the intake manifold is too thick. So you can't really just pop it in there, and you don't want to force it in there by screwing it too tight because you can strip the threads, which, hey, I did, and that was fine, but I got it fixed. We're all good there. But the thing had to be, the gasket had to be trimmed down. So I had to take a little file and shave this down. And this was at a time when all of my tools and everything were pretty much in storage. I had some basic hand tools, so I was still able to do the swap, but I had to use basically a file to file down the gasket, and it worked. So, you know, I was able to pop it in, and it was great. So the first test drive was fine. The second test drive, the car started idling very weird, very choppy. I was like, well, maybe it's just the car getting used to the valve, because it's a new valve. You know, maybe there's new measurements or new whatever stuff it's got to get used to. So I was like, all right, whatever, no big deal. So I drove it back home, cut it off, and then the next day I cut it on. Everything was fine. In fact, the car drove great. There were no issues whatsoever for about a week. And then after a week, check engine light came on, and it turns out that this was bad. So I went out and I removed it and I put the OEM one back in. There was really no change in performance because my original one was bad. This one it's a cheap piece of junk, to be honest with you, and this doesn't work. So there was no change in performance except for the fact that I knew I had at least an OEM piece that didn't work installed versus a cheap piece installed that doesn't work. I don't know, I just felt better that way. So I finally broke down, and not literally, like I finally decided to just buy an OEM valve, and that's what I ended up doing, was putting an OEM valve into the car, and that seemed to fix that issue. And then this, after about a week as well, this threw another code. The car still ran fine, but it gave me a mass airflow sensor code. So I bit the bullet and I bought a better aftermarket sensor. So instead of paying $250 for an OEM one, I bought an AC Delco one for about, I think it was like $130 for an AC Delco, if I remember right. Anyway, they say with that particular engine, you should always get the OEM one or else you'll have problems. I've probably put about 5,000 miles on this AC Delco, and I drive the car occasionally, so it's not a big deal. It works great. The car runs very, very well. Unfortunately, neither of these pieces were a fix to the actual problem that the car had, which was at 4,000 RPMs, the power would cut. And next video, we're going to explore that and how I solved it. So if you have a Z4 or you have a 330 and it has the same M54 3-liter engine, and at 4,000 RPMs you have a power cut, I got a fix for you. So join me, come back, and that video should be up very shortly. Thank you for watching.